Welcome back to r/Stories About Kevin. A Kevin, if you don't know, is someone who consistently or greatly shows a complete lack of intelligence through incompetence of social and societal norms, or is purposefully antagonistic in their poor decision making. So our first story today comes from username Brutal Beast. You know how they say that a girl keeping her BF from his friends is a red flag and a sign of controlling and abusive behaviour? Well, I would usually agree with this, except in the case of a friend of mine whose BF had some massive idiots as friends. Not the lovable type of idiots either. The dangerous, reckless, moronic types. As such, my friend would refuse to see her BF's friends most of the time, and our friend group rarely met any of them except for this one time when friend's BF actually managed to convince her to let him invite one of his friends to hang out with us. This guy, the Kevin of the story, was known for his history of drunk driving. He has caused many accidents, totaled countless cars, sustained many injuries, did damage to public property, and had several run-ins with the law, all due to his drunk driving habit. The night he hung out with us, he told us the story of the worst accident he's been in. One night, Kevin, completely drunk, got behind the wheel of his car. He ended up going 200 kilometers, which is 125 miles, per hour, on a bridge in the wrong direction. Now this bridge is built in such a way that you cannot swerve into the oncoming. In order to go the wrong way, you would have to enter the bridge by an exit ramp at one end. This would be tricky to do, and I don't know how he even managed this feat, but he did. So there he was, speeding down the bridge the wrong way, and then he collided with an oncoming vehicle and spun out of control, and ended up in the way of an oncoming truck. Said truck then slammed into his car, turning it into a clump of unrecognisable twisted metal. Now the only reason Kevin survived was because, in his inebriated state, he never put his seatbelt on. Because he wasn't strapped in, the first collision caused him to be ejected through his windshield, and that's why his dumb butt was no longer in the car when the truck crushed it. He landed on the pavement in a relatively safe place, at the side of the bridge. He still suffered many injuries and needed to be hospitalised, but he recovered fully. He concluded that he learned a valuable lesson that night. Namely, he will never again, for as long as he lives, put on a seatbelt. Still drives drunk though. That is a bizarre story, honestly. Obviously drunk driving, completely wrong, completely immoral. It means you're very selfish if you drink and drive. It means you've no regard for the safety of other people. This isn't about you getting hurt, this is about you hurting other people. Like, for example, he crashed into this other vehicle in a truck and whatever, and those people's lives were affected by that. It's not just about what happens to you. I could care less about what happens to you. I think what happens to you is kind of irrelevant here. It's just that drunk driving is very, very selfish. Other people don't deserve to pay the price for your stupid, selfish mistakes. Anyway, it is quite interesting to hear, though, that the reason he survived was because he didn't put a seatbelt on. That's actually quite interesting, and it shows that maybe he's onto something. No, I think people should wear seatbelts. You should wear a seatbelt. But it is interesting to know that if he had a seatbelt on, he'd probably be dead. So, I don't really have much else to comment on there. Our next story comes from user Sentry. We live in a 4-story building. In the flat next to us lives a mother with 3 children. The oldest of those is the Kevin of this story, and has just turned 18, and is now of legal age. We all get along pretty well, but Kevin has often demonstrated that he is not the sharpest tool in the shed. So this summer, the mother and Kevin's 2 siblings went on vacation, COVID-19 compliant, camping or something, and Kevin didn't want to go, so he stayed at home. I did the same when I was his age. Awesome time. He also could take care of their 2 cats. I should mention that this building has almost no soundproofing whatsoever. When the neighbours next door or below us speak louder than normal conversation level, we can hear them. If they're shouting, we can understand them when we're in our living room or bedroom. It can be quite annoying. The first week was eventless. We enjoyed the silence as there was no shouting next door when the mother turned off his Wi-Fi as a punishment if he didn't do his homework or similar. The second week, however, was completely different. He had some friends over. We heard them talking loudly in the stairwell, and it was hard not to notice when they arrived or left. One girl was having a phone call on her mobile in the corridor, and we came home one day. Then we noticed the smell of cigarettes in the corridor. It was even noticeable in our flat, and heard them talking about smoking weed. I'm not saying this because I want to judge his lifestyle, but to make clear that it was nearly impossible not to notice what was going on next door. And we were sure that his mother did not approve of him and his friends smoking in the flat. We weren't going to rat him out, but we also wouldn't lie if asked directly, and to be honest, we were thrilled to see how the hell he would talk his way out of it. When his mother and siblings returned, we immediately heard him scream next door. Not 1 minute later, she knocked at our door and asked us whether we heard anything. We weren't sure how to answer, so she showed us her flat. There was trash everywhere. At least one lamp was shattered, and empty air freshener bottles and empty bottles were scattered around. She also told us that their clothes had all been taken out of the wardrobes and scattered across the room, and you could smell the cigarette smoke everywhere. He apparently simply put all the used cat litter in his sister's room. The cats had used the bed as a toilet, and were now so afraid and disturbed that they hid under the bed and didn't want to come out. So we were told that we heard and saw him having 5 or 6 friends over, but we didn't hear anyone trashing the place, which is true. So she called him on his mobile in front of us. We could only hear her, but that was enough. "You come home right now. You know exactly why. When I called you 3 hours ago, I told you to clean this place up. Are you kidding me? Of course you didn't. You and your friends thrashed this place. Don't lie to me. You had people here. There are witnesses. Do you think I'm stupid? You will come home at once." We heard a lot of shouting that evening, and honestly, I don't know if we could have stayed as calm as the mother did. A few days later, we meet her outside and she tells us what his excuses were. "There were no people over. There were only 2 people over. I told you on the phone I had 5 people over. We didn't smoke. I cleaned up like you asked. Oh, so when you don't see that I've cleaned up, I don't have to do it anymore, since you won't notice it anyway?" She also told us other gems. He was supposed to feed the cats 1 can per day. He fed them too much and they ran out of cat food, and he didn't buy more. He doesn't know the difference between smoking cigarettes and smoking weed. They took speed, but thinks speed is completely legal because his friends told him so. He claimed having no idea that cats poo in the beds, but it wasn't his fault. He doesn't know why all the clothes were scattered around, but it wasn't his fault. I forgot to tell you that he managed to lock himself out of the flats 3 times in 1 day. 2 times we had to open the main building door for him, and once we had to use some tools to open the flat door that fell shut. He said, "I thought I had my key with me." What astonished us the most was the complete lack of thinking. Did he think we were just blind and deaf and didn't hear his friends? Did he think we didn't smell the cigarettes? Did he think we wouldn't tell his mother when asked? He didn't even try asking us to lie for him. Did he think his mother wouldn't notice? What the hell did he think would happen when his mother returned and saw a trashed flat? I thus conclude, a Kevin. Our next story comes from user The Diamond Castle. Background. So when I was born, my grandparents insisted on inviting every single family member to meet me in their beautiful old house. How my grandparents live in a rather small town but live more in the countryside, so they have a lot of space to host guests, which is good because my family is huge. Now I'm terrible with family trees, but my family has 2 different names and sides from a marriage a few generations back. I won't say them cause duh, but my side is quite lovely with the exception of the boys being hard-headed P-Rex. Now on the other side, my distant cousin's side, is awful. They're toxic, rude, racist, classist, and Bible thumpers. I don't like talking to them because they see me as a half-breed, because my dad is white and my mum is black. Others say they're jealous because I got all my family's good DNA since I'm a pretty good young lady, and I feel I'm as smart as I need to be. Their side is a few fries short of a Happy Meal. When they came to meet me, every single person had to say something nasty about me, from my caramel skin to my black straight hair to my big brown eyes. They even said my light bulb nose would grow to be too huge and ugly for my face. The only problems I've ever had with my button nose is it gets really oily in winter. My cousin, the entitled brat, was born around the same time as me and had pale skin, bright blonde curly hair, a chiseled nose, and bright green eyes. As we both got older, my aunt, her mother, hated how everyone would compliment how beautiful I was getting and how big I was. I got my mum's side with my body shape and I grew up a curvy girl. My cousin had a beautiful shape, but her mum wanted her to be bigger up top. But I think her hair is really what made my aunt hate me. My hair curled up like crazy as I grew and is now beautiful and bouncy. I keep it a bob or pixie length. And EB's hair is bone straight and turned a dirty blonde like her mother's. Sorry for all this, but it becomes important. Also, to keep it short, my side of the family is L and EB's is M. So I'm a 13-year-old girl who is living my best life when I go down to see my grandparents for a little. Even in my family is called train day. The L side of the family were farmers and have a lot of land to this day, and one of them used the land to make a little train area, and every L is there. We're 2 days through the party when half of the M family comes in and starts acting all sweet as sugar. Everyone is nice because we're polite to family, but I hide inside. A while later, EM, who is EB's mum, comes up to me. This is a rough retelling of the conversation. EM: "Hi OP, how are you? How are your parents?" Me, they're fine, and I'm fine. EM, that's good. Wow, just look at how you've grown. EM looks at me up and down, but plays with my hair. Me, thanks, how are you? EM, oh, I'm good, but EB is so sad. Me, being too worried about a cousin that doesn't like me. Oh no, why's that? EM, long sigh. She's being bullied at school for her looks. Makes a sad face. Me, what? But EB is pretty. What are they bullying about her? EM, oh, nothing. They just don't like how dark her hair is. Me, currently going through a hair phase. Have you tried bleaching it? EM, clearly confused and interested. Bleaching? What's that? Me, it's the thing that people with hard hair like mine do when they want to dye their hair pink or white. Do you think she'd like it? EM, smiling unnaturally happy. That sounds perfect. I'll get right on it when we get home. Me, happy I could help. Of course. You might want to get a stylist to do it the first few times, then ask them how to, but... EM, cutting me off. Yeah, whatever. She'll be fine. Fast forward a week after we get home. My mum gets a video call from EM, screeching about how her daughter's hair was ruined, and it was all OP's fault. My mum calls me down. I hear EB crying in the back as she weeps about not wanting to shave her head. Me, what happened? EM, that bleaching thing didn't work, and you ruined my baby's hair. You did this on purpose, didn't you? Me, about to cry, thinking I've ruined my cousin's life. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. What went wrong? Did she have something in her hair while you bleached it? EM, no, but now her hair is all dry and gross, and it's your fault. Me, I'm sorry. Maybe the brand you used was bad? What did you use? EM, we used Clorox and blah blah blah. At this point, EM faded into the back as I realised this woman used cleaning bleach on my cousin's hair. Not only did she do it herself, but she didn't look up anything to try and help. My mother, you use cleaning bleach on EB? EM, shrinking a little bit at the yelling. Yeah? Well, I didn't think it was so hard to... My mum cutting her off. You don't use cleaning bleach on here. Get her to the hospital now. EM, realising she did something dumb, hangs up and doesn't call back. From what I heard from my family, EB was able to not have her head shaved, but had to get almost all of it cut off into a low scalp pixie. Her hair was now horribly bright bleach blonde, but shockingly, she didn't hate it. The shortcut and the bright blonde made her happy, and she still keeps it short, which her mum hates. Our next story is from user Jason Rudert. Kevin, male, about 40 at the time, and about 4 or 5 Kevinoid friends were camping on a federal land and found an unfired grenade, the kind you would shoot out of the M79 grenade launcher. He brings the grenade back to camp, and as Kevin is wont to do, he throws it in the campfire. They all hide behind their trucks, and the grenade goes pop. So they all come out and gather around the fire, and now the main charge goes off, and they all get torn up with fragments. The main Kevin gets it the worst, critically injured and permanently disabled, with the others all having some degree of injuries. They all attempt to sue the government for negligence, and the judge tosses the suit out. And our final story today, folks, comes from user LegoManiac89. My boss's stepson is a Kevin to end all Kevins. So just over a year ago, I switched jobs and went to work for a guy, Bob, who is running a new/used aquarium shop. The shop was built onto his house, so as a result I've become pretty close with his family, including his 15-year-old stepson, who is the most Kevin person I've ever met. For the first couple of months I thought he was just a bit quirky and clumsy, but as I've come to know him more, I've discovered that he is a Kevin of the highest order. Now I've known some dumb teenagers in my time, hell I used to be one, but this kid is just on another level. Just in the year that I've known him, he licked a lit match because he thought fire would taste like a flaming hot Cheeto. He cannot climb a flight of stairs without tripping up them. This is a multiple times a day occurrence. He once dropped a bowl of cereal in milk, and rather than clean the mess with a towel, he soaped up the spill with his sock, a sock that was still on his foot. He then put on his shoes, went out to catch the bus, and went to school with a soaking wet milk sock. He went to the school nurse that day because he was convinced that his foot was bleeding and soaking through his sock. He wants to be the first pro-Trump rapper, and is currently peed off at Kanye for stealing his idea. He's failing gym class. I have no idea how one fails gym class. He has broken more than 20 aquariums in the last year. When we buy used tanks, they need washed and leak tested before we resell them. Kevin sometimes does this to help out, but can't understand that when you wrap the hose around an aquarium, you can't just yank it free. For reference, I've been in the aquarium hobby for 12 years and I've broken 2. he's not allowed to clean tanks anymore. Bob was selling an older, fairly good condition Cadillac that had been sitting in his driveway for a while. The day before the buyer came to pick it up, Kevin was mowing the yard and scraped the handle of the mower along the entire length of one side of the car. He likes to use Jew as an insult. When I called him out on it, I discovered that he thought Jewish people didn't actually exist. He thought they were an imaginary race of people that everyone pretended to hate. He played lacrosse on his school's team this summer and got benched all season because he told the coach that he didn't need to run laps or go to practice. This is probably why he was failing gym class. He left in the morning like normal to go catch the bus. 3 hours later, he came back saying that he had missed the bus and he needed to be driven to school. The problem? It was Labor Day. There was no school. He stood at the bus stop for 3 hours on a day when there was no school. He eats absolutely everything in sight. If you leave food unattended for more than 10 seconds, it's gone. Bob went to Taco Bell and got food for the four of us. Kevin was left alone with it and ate his, mine, Bob's and half of his mum's food before he realised that it probably wasn't all for him. When he found out that I am a chili head, he bragged for a week about how he loved super spicy food too. He then tried a glob of my ex-Horesco after I warned him repeatedly not to, and spent the next 2 hours crying and blaming me. We've been gradually remodelling the house when we're not working in the store. Kevin's bedroom was the first we finished. He managed to put a hole in the wall on the first day he moved in. One day he asked me, I know girls don't have a P word, but is there any just like a hole beneath their belly button where a P word would be? Bob told Kevin to wash the truck one day earlier this year. Kevin thought he'd be helpful and wash out the fuel tank as well, with water. His school lets him rent a tablet for schoolwork. He got it taken away within a week because he was using it for porn. I assumed he wanted to find out if girls had a hole where a P word should be. His parents signed him up for tutoring to help with his grades. Turns out, all the tutoring in the world won't help your grades if you never turn in your homework. He was under the impression that homework was optional. Also, he routinely falls asleep in class. He thought that fish were just very active plants. Yes, really. He managed to tip over and dump the contents of the trash can he was taking out to the roadside to be picked up. Rather than pick up the mess, he just kicked it around and spread it across the yard, in the hopes it would be less noticeable if the mess was less concentrated. I know there's more I'm forgetting and I'll edit this post as I remember them, or as Kevin gives me more material. I'll just leave you with this tidbit. Kevin starts driving in 3 months. May the gods have mercy on us all. Edit number 1. To everyone wondering if Kevin has some undiagnosed mental health issues, I suppose it's possible, but it seems more like a severe lack of common sense than anything else. I've never met his biological dad, but from what I've learned from his mum, he's one of those people who's habitually unemployed, yet spends all day bitching about how immigrants and minorities are a drain on society. I'm hoping Kevin will eventually grow out of his Kevinness and not follow in his dad's footsteps. Edit 2, November 10th, 2018. A couple more. One just happened this week. The other apparently happened a couple months ago, and Bob just told me about it. Kevin decided he was going to practice his blacksmithing by removing the leaf catcher bag from the lawnmower and bending the crap out of the metal frame. He then realised after the fact that he was probably going to get in trouble for ruining the leaf catcher, so he decided to burn the bag and throw the frame in the trash. Bob found out, and of course, Kevin has spent the last week complaining about how tedious it is to manually rake the leaves out of the yard. Kevin discovered that you can take things apart with a screwdriver and decided to disassemble the blender with his newfound knowledge. He took the entire thing apart and had no idea how to put it back together again, so he left the pieces all over the counter. When his parents asked him why he did it, he first denied it was him. He then claimed that the blender randomly just fell apart for no reason. Edit 3, April 12, 2019. Since this is getting a bit of attention today, here's an update on how Kevin's 2019 has been so far. Kevin has not started driving yet, and he likely won't for at least another year. Bob bought him an old Jeep that needed repairs before it was drivable, and Kevin managed to knock one of the side mirrors off with his bicycle. I've no idea how. Kevin has decided to start writing a fantasy novel, and in a moment of weakness, I volunteered to be his beta reader. He then told me that it's going to be an erotic orc fiction with swords. He was making a grilled cheese sandwich and decided to experiment and put peanut butter on it. He burned the peanut butter, set off the smoke alarm, ate half of it, gagged, threw it in the trash, then dug it out of the trash and ate the rest. He isn't allowed to have a cell phone because he's still failing a number of classes and is too easily distracted by technology. So he's been going to Walmart and buying the cheapest phone they have and hiding it from his parents. The problem is he hides it in his pocket and doesn't know how to silence ringtones. He's had at least 3 phones taken away from him. He got a blunt from one of his friends at school, smoked it, and then told his parents that the smell was his new cologne. That was r/StoriesAboutKevin. Make sure to leave a like on this video, helps me out a lot. And also, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. And that way you'll never miss any of my future uploads.